how insanely fast technology moves. Like, it feels like just yesterday I was rocking a flip phone and now we've got phones that can basically predict the future. But seriously, the tech landscape has totally transformed and it's left a whole lot of things behind, things that, to some of you watching, might seem like ancient artifacts from a forgotten time. We're talking about the technology that defined the late 20th century. Stuff that was so ingrained in our lives we didn't even think twice about it. Because, let's be honest, some of this stuff was pretty clunky and inconvenient. So today we're taking a trip down memory lane to revisit some of those bygone tech relics that Gen Z just wouldn't understand. Get ready to have your minds blown because we're about to dive into a world without smartphones, instant streaming and Wi-Fi that doesn't require a 15-character password. Okay, first up, let's talk about the internet. And no, I'm not talking about the internet you know and love, the internet that's always there, lurking in your pocket, ready to answer any question you might have at a moment's notice. I'm talking about dial-up. Remember dial-up? That beautiful, agonizing symphony of beeps and boops that meant you were about to embark on a journey into the digital unknown? For you younger viewers, dial-up was how we connected to the internet back in the day. And by connected, I mean tethered to a phone line, praying that no one would pick up the landline and interrupt your connection. Because if they did, game over, man, game over. You were kicked offline, and you had to start the whole agonizing process again. And speaking of agonizing, let's talk about speed, or lack thereof. Dial-up speeds were measured in kilobytes per second. Kilobytes. To put that in perspective, a single image today could take minutes, if not hours, to load. Streaming a video? Forget about it. You were lucky if you could get a grainy picture to load without it buffering every 5 seconds. So we've established that dial-up was the only way to get online back in the day. But what you might not realize is that using the internet meant sacrificing your ability to, use the phone. Yep, you heard that right. Dial-up internet and phone calls, they were like oil and water, they just didn't mix. See, dial-up used the same phone line as your landline. So if you were surfing the digital waves and someone decided to call your house, your internet connection? Gone. Poof. Vanished into the ether. And let me tell you, there was nothing quite as infuriating as being in the middle of an intense gaming session, or finally downloading that grainy music video you'd been waiting for, only to have it all ripped away by a rogue phone call. Families back then had to establish strict internet usage rules. No phone calls after 6 p.m. Timmy's downloading the entirety of Encarta Encyclopedia. It was a different time, my friends. A time when multitasking meant choosing between talking to your grandma and finishing your online homework. And you know what? It wasn't just phone calls that could interrupt your internet adventures. Remember cordless phones? Those were notorious for interfering with dial-up connections. Alright, let's move on from the wild world of dial-up and talk about another technological marvel that Gen Z might find utterly baffling, the TV dial. No, not a remote control. I'm talking about an actual physical dial on the television set itself. Imagine this, you walk up to your TV and instead of a sleek flat screen you're faced with this big boxy behemoth. And on the front of this behemoth is a row of dials or knobs, one for power, one for volume, and the piece de resistance, the channel dial. This wasn't just some fancy knob that you could spin effortlessly. Oh no, this was a workout for your fingers. You had to click the dial to each individual channel. Chapter 4. Be Kind, Rewind, the VHS Era. Now let's talk about movies, but not the movies you stream instantly on your phone or tablet. I'm talking about the days of VHS tapes, those clunky plastic cartridges that held entire movies on magnetic tape. Yes, you heard that right, magnetic tape. Remember going to the video store, spending what felt like hours, browsing the aisles, trying to find the perfect movie for your Friday night? The struggle was real, my friends. And once you finally found the movie you wanted, you'd rush home, pop the tape into the VCR, and then you'd wait, and wait, and wait some more. Because first you had to rewind the tape. Remember Be Kind, Rewind? That wasn't just a catchy slogan, it was a way of life. If you forgot to rewind the tape, well, let's just say you were public enemy number one. Watching a movie on VHS was an experience. Speaking of magnetic tape, let's not forget about the audio equivalent of VHS, the cassette tape. These little rectangular wonders were how we listened to music on the go, how we created mixtapes for our crushes, how we blasted our favorite tunes in our Walkmans. Remember those? Walkmans? They were like the iPods of the 80s and 90s. Except, bulkier and with a lot less storage space. You'd carefully curate a mixtape, meticulously recording songs from the radio or your favorite CDs, hoping and praying that the tape wouldn't get tangled in the process. Because let's be real, tangled cassette tapes were a fact of life. It didn't matter how careful you were, how gently you treated those little plastic cases, sooner or later, the tape would find a way to turn itself into a tangled mess. Alright, let's talk about data storage. No, not the cloud, not terabyte hard drives. I'm talking about floppy disks, those flimsy little squares of plastic that held a whopping, wait for it, 1.44 megabytes of data. That's right, megabytes. Not gigabytes, not terabytes, megabytes. Floppy disks were incredibly delicate. Finally, let's end our journey down memory lane with a technology that even some millennials might not remember, the rotary phone. You know, those phones with the circular dial that you had to spin to dial a number? Yeah, those things. Using a rotary phone was a workout for your fingers. You had to put your finger in the corresponding hole for each digit of the phone number and spin the dial all the way around until it clicked back into place. And if you made a mistake, well, you had to start all over again. Rotary phones were slow, they were clunky, and they were about as far from the sleek smartphones we have today as you can get. But there was a certain charm to them, a certain elegance in their simplicity. And let's be honest, they looked pretty darn cool sitting on your desk. So, there you have it, a whirlwind tour of some of the old school technology that Gen Z just wouldn't understand. It's amazing to think how far we've come in such a short amount of time. The things we take for granted today were unimaginable just a few decades ago. So, the next time you're effortlessly streaming a movie on your phone or sending a file instantly to a friend, take a moment to appreciate the incredible technological advancements that have made it all possible. And while we're at it, let's give a shout out to those clunky, quirky, and often frustrating technologies that paved the way. They may be gone, but they're certainly not forgotten.